it's definitely an honor for me to introduce Dr. Sammarco. I'm gonna say a few things. Rather than read her whole bio, I handed it out, so most of you have copies of it. So, I mean, there's a lot of information here, but she's even better than what it says here. I can tell you that. I've been in law enforcement for 31 years, and I believe in my 31 years we've probably had 4 or 5 coroners, maybe even 6. I can honestly tell you, in my 31 years, I believe that Dr. Sammarco is the best coroner that we have had in Hamilton County, hands down. And I tell you, the reason I believe that is she is passionate about her job. She's connected, and she truly cares. She really does. And she's connected with the police chief. She's connected, as the judge says, with the prosecutor's office and the judicial system in the county. And one thing I really like about Dr. Sammarco is she doesn't care about politically correct. She just cares about doing the right thing. And I think if any of you have, as you've seen on the news, since she's been in office, she doesn't care to go toe-to-toe with anybody, because if it's the right thing to do, that's what she'll do, because she'll put the politics aside and go for what's right. So that's just a few things that I wanted to say about Dr. Sammarco. Like I said, you have her bio. She's very impressive, but I can tell you she does a great job, and I've been fortunate enough to get to know her and call her my friend, and she is a wonderful lady, a wonderful mom, and a great person, Dr. Sammarco.
Wow, that sounded really impressive. I'm starting to wonder who he was talking about. I'll give you a little background. I was actually born in India, but I came here when I was 6 years old, and I went to Clifton Elementary School while my dad was doing his psychiatry residency at the old Roman Psychiatric Institute, when that used to be the assistants. And I remember he used to go to Longview Hospital. Did anybody remember that, Longview Hospital? Then we moved to Milford for a short period of time, and I went to 6th and 7th grade in Milford, at Milford, Maine Middle School, which I think they're trying to tear the building down now or something, but I actually went to middle school there. And then my parents moved to Mariemont, and actually not, the Indian Hill Terrace Apartments. I think that's sort of Mariemont for a little while, and then moved to Indian Hill, and I went to Cincinnati Country Day School from 8th grade on and graduated from there. So I did stay here. I was like the judge. I went to UC undergrad, and but I did stay, and I was in electrical engineering, believe it or not. And I co-opted. It was at that time when I was building little computer parts and stuff. I'm like, I cannot do this for the rest of my life. And I said, can somebody else could do it? But it was just too closed in and behind an office. And I went to med school here at UC, and then I left Cincinnati for 12 years, and I did my training in Pittsburgh, Cleveland, at UCLA, came back to Cleveland and joined the Cleveland Clinic as neuroradiology staff there for 3 years, and then commuted 1 year between Cleveland and Baltimore, Maryland every week. My husband was doing his fellowship in Baltimore, so 3 days a week I was in Baltimore, 2 days a week I was in Cleveland, and then we moved here and settled back down. So we've been back here 15 years, and I love being back in Cincinnati. It's a great town to come back to, and you don't appreciate it as a kid, and you know, when you're rebellious and you're a teenager, you can't wait to get out of here. And then you go out and see these other places, like, I can't wait to get back, and that's what happened with us. So my background is radiology, and I'm a board certified radiologist, so I worked for a few of the local hospitals for a while and doing general radiology, but I did a fellowship in neuroradiology at UCLA, so, and then came back and joined the staff at the Cleveland Clinic. So my specialty is imaging of the brain and spine and the neck, anything above the clavicles and the spine. And I still do that a little bit on the side, but it's not as nearly as much as I used to. and I do a little bit more of the medical legal stuff on the side, but this is a full-time job, and I don't think people really truly understand how much of a full-time job it is, because there's going to scenes and responding to scenes. I don't go to every single one of them, but I do try and go to some of the more important ones, some of the more, my people are all camera shy, every single one of them, and nobody wants to make a statement in front of the press. And I've got 4 forensic pathologists working in our office. We have 5 investigators working in our office. And when a call comes in to our office and says, do you think that this is a coroner case? First person that answers that is the investigators. And all our investigators, except for one who's retired military, the rest of them are all retired law enforcement. In fact, the former police chief of Newtown works for us as an investigator. And so they make that call, they make the decision. Usually they know what the rules and regulations are. And if it's a homicide, if it's a particularly bad traffic accident, if it's anything where they're confused or don't know, they will automatically call the pathologist on call, who they're also the deputy coroners, and they'll discuss the case with them, and they will choose to either go to the case or not, and then the investigators will go. Now, if it's one of those really strange cases, I get the phone call first, and then the deputy coroner, and we usually go together on some of those cases. And I have to tell you, there have been, and growing up here in Cincinnati, and I never thought that some of this stuff happens in Cincinnati, Ohio. And it's been an eye-opening experience to really see some of the stuff that I've seen. And the last few weeks, and I know you guys have seen this on the news, but the last few weeks of baby deaths that we've had to deal with in our office have been particularly rough. And it reminds me of the first 2 weeks that I actually started in office. We had 3 baby deaths in that first 2 weeks I was in office. I was a 3-month-old, a 4-month-old, and a little 2.5-year-old boy. And I didn't think I could do this job. I was like, I can't do this. I am not getting any sleep. I'm biting everybody's head off at home. I can't do this. This is too horrible. I don't want to know that there's this much, nasty, evil stuff in this world. I said, I don't want to know. And there have been, somebody asked me once, do you ever go home and hug your kids? And I said, one night, I responded to Bethesda North, and a baby had been brought there, and in really bad shape. And I went back home, and my son was 9 years old at the time. He's 12 now. And I crawled into bed with him, and, I just hugged him, and I stayed there. I found myself awake in the morning when his alarm went off in the morning. But there have been a few days like that in this office. And why do I stay in it? Why do I keep doing what I do? Why do I, actually people don't understand this, why did I take a pretty huge pay cut to do the job? A long time ago, my grandfather in India taught us, and I grew up with my cousins for a while, that at some point in your life, living in a community and in a society, you're going to be asked to do public service. And I hope that you take that opportunity, and it will change your life, but I hope you take that opportunity and take the time and do it. And I remember when this came up, and I was asked if I would consider taking the coroner position when the previous coroner died suddenly, that I was only 5 years old, but I remember exactly where I was, sitting cross-legged on the floor, listening to my grandfather, and that little conversation came back, and I decided, I guess this is my time. So, and I look at this office, and some of the things that I've talked to Chief Hines about, it's really about the people, and it's really about, as a community, what we can do and what we choose to do. Saving the kids is an important thing for me. And I don't mean just the babies, but, I go to all different high schools, and we give talks about staying off drugs, staying away from the violence, stay alive, stay in school, stay off drugs. That's basically the message. And graduate. Our last slide we show on our talk is there's one slide of kids in caps and gowns throwing their caps up. The other slide is body bags on the gurneys in our office in the morgue. So we'd rather you do this. We don't want to see you do this. But if you go down this path to drugs or violence, you're going to end up like this. You're not going to end up graduating. And we're hoping that that message gets to the kids. We show them some things, and I think I've had feedback back from some of the parents of these kids that have said, this was topic of dinner conversation. What did you say to the kids? They were talking to their siblings about it. What did you show them? That's what I wanted. I wanted that engagement, that sharing and pay attention to what we're saying. It's not just once. They have to have it reinforced at home. They have to have it reinforced at school. They have to have it reinforced by community leaders. I mean, if they hear it from everybody, we have a better chance of making that sink in. And so that's what I'm hoping to do. I mean, I have a 12-year-old and a 15-year-old. And I feel like the innocence that I felt I had at that age, I don't see so much in them because of the stuff that they're exposed to. And as a society, I think these kids are maturing and experiencing things that I wish they didn't have to at that age. But being that that's the case, though, let's teach them the right things. They're being exposed to this. Let's teach them what's good and what's bad, and let them solidify that in their heads so that when they go out as adults, they're clear on what's good and what's bad. Because I would never want one of my kids involved in any of the crimes that I have seen, or even being in the path of a stray bullet. I mean, this little girl in Walnut Hills a few weeks ago, I mean, that was a totally random thing, and you think it could have been any one of our kids attending a party, but that's why I keep doing it. And the other thing is, there are a few things our county needs, and I am not politically correct, probably. I don't play the political game. I don't care what party they're in. I don't care what team they're on. I don't care if they're wearing red, blue, yellow, or green. There are some basic things that our county needs. There are some basic things every community needs. But if we want public safety, that means investment in our law enforcement, investment in our fire, investment in the things that back them up. And the crime lab does that. And the crime lab also helps with arson investigations, and people don't realize that, is that we're an integral part of those types of things. But you have a crime lab that's over 40 years old. We're in a building where there was an independent analysis done, and they said right now we need 75,000 square feet and 14 more full-time people. I have nowhere to put them. I have $100,000 microscopes in hallways with bar stools pulled up to them. If you ever come into the building on some days, you will smell a lot of pot. And you think, wow, why is that? Well, that's because it's probably drying in the boiler room. We don't have anywhere else to dry it, so, we lay out white sheets and pieces of paper, and boiler room is locked. Nobody's going in there, but it's, laying out in the boiler room, and it's drying. And sometimes I go up to the crime lab floor, and it's just so thick. The smell is so thick. I think, how are these people working? I mean, they have to be high every day or they build a resistance, because just go up there and it's just overwhelming some days. So, I mean, and it's the crime lab and the issues that we're having there, the equipment. The morgue has its own issues, and not to get gross, but we've had some sewer issues in the morgue, and if we don't have a high pressure jetting of our sewer system every night, it backs up. That's one place in the city you don't want backing up. And the solution would be $250,000, ripping the floor up all the way out into the middle of the parking lot and fixing all of it. But the building is obsolete, and I don't think the taxpayers should fund a $250,000 repair or a $2 million renovation of the electrical system that it really needs. There's no backup power to the body coolers. If we lose electricity, nobody's allowed to open the body coolers. Not going in, not taking out. They're just not allowed to open them. We do have a generator. It works for 4 hours. It powers emergency hallway lighting, one computer, and one server. And the fire alarm. So there are some challenges in the building, and we've been, the commissioner spent $100,000 in 2011 to order this report. It's $100,000 of all our money, right? And I said, if you're gonna spend that kind of money, you darn well better have a plan. And when I started, I'm like, what's your plan? Because first day I was in the office, that report was sitting on my desk. And they all, the three of them just looked at each other and said, "You don't have a plan?" Let me get this straight. You spent $100,000 to get this report without any idea what you were gonna do with it? So then we started pushing and pulling and trying to find a new place, and yeah, and Rick knows, I went and talked to everybody and anybody I could think of. And Catholic Health Partners, Mike Connolly said, "Hey, listen, we're moving out of 2 hospitals. What would an old hospital do?" I thought, yeah, there's a lot of things we could do with an old hospital. There's a lot of there's a lot of stuff that's already in the hospital that we could use. And so renovation costs would be a whole lot less than building from scratch. Well, you guys have been through this last 2 years of the roller coaster ride, and feeling great, we're gonna do something about it. Oh no, this isn't gonna work. Oh yeah, they said yes, but no, this isn't gonna work. And this has been going on for 2 years, since January of 2013 when it was first offered. And then in January of this year, they've decided to turn the Mount Airy Hospital down completely. And, you know, yes, we were disappointed. More so though, I said, you know, I don't care if you turn it down, but you have to have a plan. I mean, every time we come up with a possibility, all you do is shoot it down. I have seen, that's all negative. I have seen no positive from you guys, and from the department, from the administration. Show me what you're doing to make this happen. And finally, we're working on, we're looking at 3 or 4 different possibilities, but they're pretty far out. And we're still struggling in our building. And let's see, we had a gas leak and had to shut it down. And then Monday we had the water main break down the street, and so we had no water to the building. And the body coolers are cooled with chilled water, so again, nobody takes any bodies out or in. And so, you know, we're hobbling along, we're getting the work done. Part of the problem, though, is our people are so darn good. They have made do for too long, and they're so good at it, they have not let the ball drop, that everybody just goes along and is like, oh, well, you know, we know they have problems, but they're still doing a good job. That's the problem. Is we have these very obsessive people that really take pride in what they do, and so they keep doing it. And one of them, in fact, one of our best drug techs lives right here in Mariemont. And Laura Kimball, if any of you know her, and she's phenomenal. She is now in the Fusion Center, which is a federally funded center that all of law enforcement participates in, and she scours the internet and scours all the social websites and finds out what the kids are calling the new drugs and the special drugs, and she gets all those catchy names, and she teaches all of us so that we're familiar with it. And so when we go out and talk at the schools, we're talking the right language, so they know what we're talking about. But we have some pretty amazing people. The crime lab director has been in that office for 35 years. And he's an Elder High School grad, so he's one of those people that you say, what school did you go to? He doesn't talk about the college. He says Elder High School, and he's wearing purple a lot. We have 2 other people that wear purple a lot in our office. The head of toxicology, Bob Topmiller, who's actually nationally renowned. And John Hiley, who's one of our firearms guys. They're all Elder High School grads. Mike Trimpe, who's the crime lab director, is not only nationally renowned, and he's sought after to give talks all over the country, and we can't let him go because we're short-staffed, and he's one of the best trace evidence specialists in the world, and we can't be without his services for that long, although he gets to go once in a while. Last year, they had a big forensic science conference in Dresden, Germany. He was the only American invited, and they paid for everything for him to go, and he is one of 7 people in the world that sets the standards for gunshot residue. So he and these 6 other people set the standards that everybody else, every other crime lab in the world uses for gunshot residue. And he just hosted a meeting for all of them in Orlando, Florida. So we've got some pretty amazing people in our office, and we're really, Hamilton County just doesn't appreciate what we have because they quietly do their work, not looking for any attention, kind of hiding in the background in the little lab, doing what they do. I'll give you an example. We were just talking about raw honey, and I know recently, you know, with all the allergies going around, somebody suggested that my son, he has various allergies in the spring, try raw honey, a spoon a day. Really? A spoonful of raw honey a day? So isn't that a Mary Poppins song? Oh wait, that was a spoonful of sugar. And so I said something to Mike Trippy about it. He took a little strip of it and he put it on a slide and he looks at it. He goes, oh, interesting. He called the little farm where the honey came from and he asked them if they had buckeye trees around them. And they said, well, yeah, we have lots of buckeye trees around here. Well, the pollen that he saw in that raw honey, he recognized as buckeye pollen. And it was, I mean, that's how good, they're like, really? I mean, isn't pollen just pollen? I mean, really, there's a different look to each different, but apparently there is. But that's the people, those are the people that I work with on a daily basis. Some of the hardest working people and probably one of the hardest jobs is the investigators are the first on the scene along with law enforcement. And I will tell you, having been to some of those scenes, that is having experienced law enforcement people that are hardened, that know their jobs, they're professionals, don't react, and can keep their cool is unbelievably important. Because some of these scenes that I have been to, I've just done this, I'm like, excuse me guys, I have to walk back out. You know, and I'm not used to this like they are to some degree, but these guys go out and do it every day and every night. And they take call. And when they're on call, they get called at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, they go out. Sometimes they're out all night. We work with the fire and EMS guys fairly regularly. In fact, Darryl Gordon was somebody we'd worked with a few times. He was with the heavy equipment. That was the firefighter that lost his life in the line of duty. And he had worked on an auto accident on Beachmont Levee with us once, where we had to shut the levee down and we had to have heavy equipment come in and tear this car apart so we could get the victim out. The heavy equipment company also helped us when the 75 overpass fell. And we were clambering up ladders just to get to the top of the overpass and try and get to the victim under all the rubble. And we were there 3.5 hours in the freezing cold trying to get him out and figure out a way to do it. And they really helped us. So we're lucky that we have, and I think this is a unique region, and I've heard it said over and over and over again, that the cooperation here amongst the law enforcement agencies and the fire and EMS is amazing. I mean, that goes from federal all the way down to the small jurisdictions. They all work together. Nobody says, oh, this is mine, not yours, don't take this. It doesn't happen. And the prosecutor's office we have a great relationship. And especially when it comes to children, Joe Dieter says that I'm just a little further right than Cy Lease. And I'm not sure that's a compliment. He said that a couple of times. But I think he means that, you know, and maybe that comes from the mother aspect of it, but, you know, it's just, you don't hurt children. I mean, in my book, you just don't do it. There's nothing worse. And so, you know, when I see something like that happen and you see these babies and what they've been through and, you know, you get 26-month-old babies that have been tortured every single day of their life. I mean, you just wonder what goes through somebody's head that they can do that. And yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have much sympathy for the people that do that. I don't. And I think that, and one of the reasons that, you know, I wanted to send this letter to all the senators and congressmen is that they're up here. They don't see this. You know, they're up here, we're down here. And they're so far away from the realities of what we deal with. And I just want them to, number one, realize that what they see up here, what they're doing up here at the law level, what I understand what their intention is, it's not working down here. And I want them to just realize that disconnect is costing lives. And that's the important thing. And I think that, like I said, I don't play the political game. I'm not afraid to tell it like it is. Because these little kids don't have voices. They don't vote. They don't contribute to campaigns. You know, they can't shake your hand. And they get forgotten. So it's been an eye-opening experience. Have I covered everything?
Yeah, one other thing I want to talk about though is the importance of having the crime lab that we have here. You know, there was talk about combining our crime lab with BCI at the state level, huge mistake. Because I'm telling you, if we've got a case that, if that happened, evidence would not get processed in time for us to even be able to put our case through the system.
Well, they'd be
And-
out of jail before you could
Well,
get an
exactly.
answer.
I mean, the state has, their backlog, they can't handle what they have, let alone handle what we've got. And with Dr. Sammarco and her team, you know, if there's a case that, if we make a phone call and say, hey, you know, we've got a grand jury date next Tuesday, can you get this done for us? They will do everything they can do to move that case up and get it done, and get the report to us so that we could take it to grand jury. That would never happen if the state was involved in that.
Where's the state, if
It's
they
up
merge?
in London,
London,
Ohio.
Oh,
Ohio.
so up near Columbus?
Yeah,
So you
so-
would move up there?
No,
No,
What
and
would you do if
they just, yeah, here's the bottom line. The crime lab is a service for this county. And the commissioners are technically right in that it's not mandated by law, so we're not required to have it. But we are the second largest county in Ohio. Cuyahoga County has their own crime lab, and Montgomery County has their own crime lab, and they're smaller than we are. But the coroner's office is mandated by law. The coroner's functions are mandated by law. They can't get rid of that. They have to fund a morgue and a coroner's office. I will tell you that the crime lab generates income because we actually do work for 3 counties in Indiana, some jurisdictions in Kentucky, and other counties outside of Hamilton. And we charge for the work that we do for outside of Hamilton County. We don't charge inside Hamilton County except for drugs. And the only reason we have to charge for drugs is Hamilton County has a rapid indictment process. They need the results back on drugs in 10 calendar days, not business days, 10 calendar days. So if it's turned in on Friday and we don't have anybody in the lab on the weekends, we can't afford to keep anybody overtime. That means that somebody doesn't start processing it till Monday. We have to have that report done by the following Friday. And our turnaround time in our lab for drugs is 4 days. BCI's turnaround time, which is the state crime lab, is 28 to 30 days. So they would never be able to comply with this. The other thing is we do about 11,000 cases a year in Hamilton County. BCI does about 3 times that, so they do about 33,000. But they do that for 88 counties in Ohio. Our primary responsibility is Hamilton County. These guys never have to take a number and wait in line with us. Hamilton County is first. So when it's a Hamilton County case, we do that first and it takes priority. BCI, they can't do that. They're answerable to 88 counties in Ohio. That's what the state crime lab does. So are our cases gonna get the attention at BCI that we do in Hamilton County with our own crime lab? Absolutely not. So it's a matter of public safety. These guys work very hard getting the bad guys. Well, if you wanna put them away, you're gonna have to be able to process that evidence quickly enough that the prosecutors can do their job. So that's the important thing. And nothing against what Attorney General DeWine has done. He's done a great job. But there's only so much you can do when you're doing 88 counties. That's why the bigger counties have their own crime lab. And Franklin County, although the county itself doesn't have its own crime lab, Columbus just built their own crime lab. So they also have a new, very nice, new crime lab there. So we're very jealous.
So why are they doing this? Because we don't have the money, or we don't have the facilities, or?
It's a matter of priorities. How do you want to spend your money? Just so you know, our budget's only about $4 million a year. The overall county budget's about $300 million a year. So we're only a very small of that overall county budget.
So this is the commissioners that are making this, trying to make this, okay.
So if they got rid of it, well, I will tell you, if they got rid of the crime lab portion, they still have to fund the coroner's office and the morgue. That's still $2 million. And right now, with us bringing in about $1 million to the crime lab, that covers expenses in the morgue that the county taxpayers don't have to pay. For example, shoe covers, masks, gowns, scalpels, saw blades, trying to think, some of the drapes that we use, those are all paid for by monies generated in the crime lab. Those, we don't get enough money from the county, from the general fund to pay for those. So if we didn't have the crime lab, we'd have to pay a lot more to support the morgue.
Yeah, and I'd be sending people to London, Ohio to take evidence, so you'd have to buy me more cruisers and pay overtime and whole 9 yards, so it's just it's a trickle-down effect.
Yeah, that's
We-
true,
we-
'cause-
You got a bicycle.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, every law enforcement person, every law enforcement jurisdiction that had evidence, if you have to take it to the state crime lab, you have to have an officer drive it up there, drop it off, and come back, wait till it gets done, then go back up there to pick it up, and then bring it back again. And that's fuel, wear and tear on the cars, and an officer's time. You know, that it takes to go, it's almost 2 hours
Yeah.
to get to London each way.
Is there anything we can do to lobby to, the commissioners, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think sending emails and letters and phone calls and saying, you know, Mr. Hartman, we don't believe the crime lab is a luxury item,
Okay.
but we
Well,
think
and
it's a necessity.
I've talked to the mayor and council about, it may come down to council passing a resolution that
Yeah.
we're not for this if they don't get off of it. You know, we thought we had this thing taken care of,
Yeah.
last year with the meeting with the Attorney General, and it rears its ugly head again, so.
I'll tell you, Mike DeWine has said, the Attorney General has said, he goes, we've looked into what we can do, we cannot take on anymore. And they are absolutely overwhelmed with what they have, and I met with the director of BCI just last month, and he said, yeah, we can't afford you guys to be closed down, because we couldn't possibly do your work in addition to what we're already doing.
Yeah, no police chief wants to look at a victim's family of, let's say, a rape, and, you know, we can't prosecute this case because we can't get the evidence processed in time, and,
We're gonna have to let them go.
yeah, we'd have to let them go. I mean, who wants to do that? And that's very, very, very possible if we didn't have our own lab. It's just, I can't stress enough how important it is for us to have our own lab. It would be absolutely detrimental to law enforcement and to the judicial system here in Hamilton County if we didn't have our own.
We actually recently had a case of a date rape, and it was actually from the Banks. It was from one of the bars in the Banks. This girl found herself, had gone out with a girlfriend, woke up in the morning and half-dressed in Newport, Kentucky. And Newport took the report and whatnot, but didn't submit any biological material, didn't do anything, didn't do a rape kit, didn't take her to a hospital, nothing. So she came back over this way, and her mom took her to the University Hospital, and filed a report here locally, and then we processed her blood, her urine, and all the other biological material. We did identify, there are some date rape drugs that will last long enough in the bloodstream and in the urine that we can actually collect and test for it and find it. Unfortunately, there's a couple that are very short acting, and they're gone in 4 to 6 hours. And, you know, if we can't get somebody in their material, we can't test for it. But we were able to find that in her, and I think they had a suspect last I heard. That's the kind of stuff that we try and rush through, because we want these guys off the streets.
Is there any other questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
So
Bob's
is there,
got
is there enough money there for to fund a private lab to do the crime
Well,
work?
here's the problem with the private lab. Then everybody would end up having to pay for it. I mean, right now it's funded by the county, so that everything that we do, other than drugs, is free for every law enforcement jurisdiction. If you had a private lab, then every single, you guys, you'd be asking the mayor for X amount of dollars a year to pay for all of that forensic evidence to be processed. And the taxpayers would then have to pay that much more.
Yeah, but that's,
I mean, listen,
It's
you're
not the
already
answer.
paying county taxes, and a lot of that is already going up to Columbus. We'd like to get some of that back here in the county.
Yeah, sure.
But you know, your tax dollars are going to this. So if you went to a private lab though, then you're having to pay more.
Maggie, do you have a question?
Yeah, I do. So thank you, first of all, for coming, and I'm a mom of two under three, so I share your opinion about the recent news. But, so I have some experience in Baltimore also working, with their law enforcement program, and also I worked, back in the day with Women Helping Women in Cincinnati and taking girls to get rape kits processed. So I have some, and also in 1993, I toured our facilities here and was shocked at like the difference between CSI on TV, which I think is what people perceive might be what we have, and it is
Not like that.
ridiculous. And like even in Baltimore, like no air conditioning, like it was shocking. Like, but anyway, and they do.
Well, we have
film-
one air conditioner.
Right,
working.
and I mean, like it's just not what we in like our normal, we who I was
I know.
before I ever had that experience was, and I think most people are.
Well, this
as
is more like in the
voters.
era of Quincy.
Right, I mean, it's like
I mean,
wow,
really, that's why it was built.
versus, like,
Everything in there is really
yeah,
like it.
regular- Exactly. So thank you for hanging in there, because I really appreciate somebody with your
Thank
level
you.
of education to temper yourself and be able to do this. But, so, what is the mechanism by which, like, Columbus was able to achieve a new crime lab, whereas Cincinnati is now being asked to fold in maybe something larger? And could we replicate that in Cincinnati?
Well, I think there are a number of different ways. Like I said, it's all a matter of priorities. And, you know, I realize with this, a $300 million pot, it has to be juggled in such a way that your services for the county get covered. You know, whether it's a sewer district, which is a problem all its own, but JFS, you know, needs certain funds to get covered. The mental health services have to get covered and so forth. There's a lot of different things that the county has to make sure they cover. So, if you're not gonna allocate and make it a priority, then the only other way is what Franklin County did, and they had a finite sales tax, where they said, we need X amount of dollars to fund a new crime lab. And Columbus City actually did this, put the tax in place. They got the money in the account, and the tax went away.
Okay, so it's like we do with our sports teams, like we have this,
So,
and
and
we pay for it.
just
and
for
then-
example, one of the things that it came up, and I didn't suggest that this was, I don't like paying taxes. I don't like paying any more than I have to, believe me, but there are certain things that you need in a society. So, if they had chosen to do a 1/4 cent sales tax for the crime lab, 1 year would have paid for the renovation of Mount Airy.
Right.
Not 5, not 20, not $110 million, which I have no idea where they came up with that number from, because the GBBN or the architects that they hired gave them a figure of $21.5 million to renovate Mount Airy for the crime lab. So, a 1/4 cent sales tax generates about $35 million a year for the county. And 40% of that is paid for by out-of-county residents that come into the county to use services, to go to ball games, to go to shows, to go to bars, etc. So it's only 60% paid for by Hamilton County residents, unlike a property tax. I mean, if they hiked up our property tax, it'd be 100% as us. So that was an option. Nobody likes the T word. You know, nobody wanted to go there. And, I mean, I understand, but it's a political thing. It's a political hotbed. It isn't for me. But, I mean, and that's what they chose to do. I believe, though, as do most of the people in my office, that had they let this go to a referendum and let the voters vote on it, it would have won with less resistance than the museum center.
Do you think there's a way, because, you know, I think also a lot of us see criminals as not part of us. Like, it's really tough until you work in the criminal justice system to perceive the fact that people that don't make great choices are often part of us. And
Yep.
I've seen people's fathers bleed out on the street. I've seen kids. I've held children while we took their parents. I mean, it's just what a regular Catholic school girl that
Yep.
went to private school does in her career when she does this work is not what you ever expect to do. But do you think there's a way to like package this for the, I don't know, people call it the media, but it's not. It's for the rest of us too, or the people who aren't.
Well, I think the
in middle
media
of it, like,
is very
People
supportive.
will be willing to support it, you know?
And I do, that's what I said, if it had gone to a vote, I think it would have won hands down. I can't tell you, I mean, I get stopped at Kroger or you know, wherever I am every day and saying, I can't believe they didn't vote for the crime lab. I can't believe they didn't pass that. I have not had even one person come up to me and say, boy, what a bad idea. Why would you want to spend that money and move the crime lab into Mount Airy? Not one.
But I'm
So,
doing it, so, yeah.
and I think the media has been supportive of it too. And I think what you were saying though is that it's in every neighborhood. You know, crime isn't something that goes away. We're actually a pretty low crime city. For a metropolitan area our size, it's really low. And I love that about Cincinnati, right? That's why I moved. That's one of the reasons I moved back. This is a great city to live in because I knew my kids were going to be safer here than in Baltimore, for example, or Pittsburgh.
Baltimore's awesome, but it had more than one murder per
absolutely.
day in, like, for 96 when I was there.
So, but you know, Rick and I have talked about this. Heroin doesn't know any geographic boundaries. We've had 3 heroin overdose deaths in the last 6 months in Indian Hill.
What was the, what was the?
19, 20, 24 years old. One of them had just, 5 months before, had just graduated from Indian Hill High School. So, again, it is in every neighborhood, and it's not just heroin. Boy, I mean, there's every single, that's just the one that gets the attention, but there's meth, there's marijuana, and for the record, I am against legalization of marijuana. I just think that's a bad idea, and anybody that says it's not a gateway drug, come talk to me, or go to medical school. You'll learn that, and they say, well, how about alcohol? Alcohol's a gateway drug, absolutely. Anything that reduces your ability to make proper judgments is a gateway drug. That means you're moving on to something else. And if somebody suggests, and this happens all the time at these high school raves and whatnot, these kids drink something and somebody says, hey, you gotta try this. They're a little bit out of it, they're a little bit drunk, and they'll try it. You know, they don't think twice about it. So, you know, somebody said, well, how about alcohol? Hey, if I had my way, we'd raise the drinking age to 25. But it's out the gate and you're not gonna change it. But this isn't. And I think this is something that, one of their arguments is, you know, think about the tax money you're gonna generate from taxing marijuana, and we can build more rehab centers. I'm like, oh yeah, that's brilliant. Like, that's brilliant. Create the addicts and build the rehab centers. Yeah, that's great logic. Yeah.
Thanks for all your energy and for promoting this. And I'm sure you know that going and talking to communities and doing one-on-one. But if you have any ideas, please pass it on to the so-called leaders or people of political strength so that this can be achieved, because you have the knowledge and the hands-on-hand knowledge that can achieve this. And I always think, you know, if you keep working at it, that it will get achieved, but you have to, I know, give a lot of yourself for that. But anyway, thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
I'm sure I speak for everyone here, to say a sincere thank you. I'm really
That's my
in
pleasure.
your energy to solve this problem. This is kind of a crystal ball question and maybe a bit unfair, but with all of the experience we've had with the state taking away our taxes, about 30% of it now, and I'm really hurting the local government ability to function. Do you see there's kind of a big trend in the state government to keep these labs, smaller labs, from functioning because they just want to centralize and get the power and some perception of a revenue stream here?
You know, centralizing, well, first of all, it wouldn't be a revenue stream for them. The BCI is funded by the state, but doesn't generate money from anywhere else. So they can take on extra work, but they're not gonna make any more money unless the governor gives them more funds. And
Unless they're the only act in town.
what's that?
Unless they're the only act in town.
And then they would have to increase their funding. Now, Summit County used to have their own crime lab and no longer does. And they were closed down. So, there are smaller crime labs in different counties, but not full service. There are only 3 full-service crime labs in Ohio other than the state crime lab. And Montgomery County, Cuyahoga County, and Hamilton County are the only ones left. So, and somebody has said in the past, if the state crime lab could provide the service to local law enforcement that we do, I don't have any problem. That's great. put one down here and provide the exact same service these guys get or better. But fund it, make it happen, but make sure it is. But what happens when we get a new attorney general? And that attorney general doesn't wanna spend the money on the crime labs or the smaller satellite offices. We had an attorney general in the past, before Attorney General DeWine, who didn't think we should spend that much money on state crime labs. What happens when that happens? You cannot go backwards, and you pull all that, and we've gotten rid of our county crime lab, what are you gonna do? You can't start from scratch. And you know, forensic scientists don't grow on trees. They're pretty hard to find, good ones especially. And if we lose ours, we've lost a few in the last few years, they're hard to come by. One of the things that the county administration said to me is, well, if we find you a new place, you're not planning on hiring 15 new full-time people immediately, are you? Because we can't afford it. I looked at him, I'm like, where do you think I'd find them? I said, we find like 2 people a year max if we can find them. So they just, you know, they're not standing outside in a line with their resumes going, please hire us. Some of these guys, especially firearms guys, they're worth their weight in gold. Especially really experienced, trained firearms guys are very hard to find. We have 4 of them, and I do not intend to lose even one. And our lead guy moved here. He's from Wisconsin, but he moved here. He worked for a private firm in Afghanistan for years, and he's really good. And Kevin is the guy that, he actually testified in the Seilhauer trial, you know, the Madeira trial. That was the one where the whole thing about the swingers and all that came up, about Mason and everything. Yeah, he actually testified in that, but he gets up on that witness stand, and that goes for all the guys in our office. They are like CSI when they get on a witness stand. They are totally unshakable. They are very believable experts because that's what they are. You know? And the prosecutor's office will tell you, they're great to have on the stand because they just kind of make your case. Like, nope, this is what it is. Well, couldn't it be? No, it couldn't. You know, it's like, that's what it is. And it's kind of hard to find expert witnesses that can shake that. And they do it because they love the job.
What about the possibilities of Deaconess Hospital? I mean, moving your lab there, I know that was a possibility at one time. Is that still an option? Does it have any potential?
We have been talking about that for a while. I brought it up 3 years ago when I first started. I said, why don't we just move into Deaconess Hospital? It's right across the street. We want to have a relationship with the University of Cincinnati's Criminal Justice Department, which is out of Teachers College, which is right there. It's that building, like 2 buildings away from Deaconess, so it's an easy walk. Deaconess, right now, I think they're moving out, but has the inpatient facility for psych for University of Cincinnati Hospital. We can't be in the same facility as inpatient psych patients. I mean, couldn't do that. So, yeah, that would not work. But if they get out, the older part of the hospital would not work for the same reasons that our building has its issues and whatnot, wouldn't work. It would cost too much to renovate that and to make it safe for employees. The newer part of the hospital, I think, could work, but it's a huge building, and if they're gonna object to Mount Airy because of its size, and it was free with 70 acres, I mean, they're gonna balk at Deaconess Hospital because of the cost of the renovation.
If you time it right with a ballot issue and you market it right, who's the they? Like, did they have to approve it and then you get it on the
3
ballot?
commissioners that make the calls in this county.
They need to approve it and then you can put it on the ballot? Okay. So it's a process issue.
And that's basically what happened with the museum center,
Yeah.
is that they had to approve it going on the ballot and then,
Because that would be great. I mean, I went through their criminal justice program before my PhD started, and I think that would have been a just stupendous opportunity. They're ranked first in the nation, I
They
think,
are.
still, and
They
there
are.
are 3 criminal justice, not criminology programs in the nation. I think that would have been like a co-op opportunity
Yes.
that is unsurpassed.
UC is the #1 criminal justice program, and if they got a chance to rotate through a working crime lab,
Oh my
I think it
gosh.
would have just
I
improved.
mean, I went to Baltimore to do that.
Yeah,
And it
so,
was like
so the
crazy hot
other
and
thing,
crazy.
is with we also have residents and medical students that rotate with us from the medical school, and pathology residents, as well as child abuse fellows from Children's Hospital rotate with us and actually go out on scenes with us. We wanted to expand that relationship with the university, a teaching relationship. We actually had this great plan for glassed-in hallways at Mount Airy, where we want to invite the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, the school groups, the civic groups, whoever wanted to see how it's done. They would be able to walk through without it violating our DNA airspace. They'd be allowed to, get through and be able to see the work, kind of like in the CSI series and in those shows. But we can't do that now. I get asked every day, oh, can we take a tour of the crime lab? I would love to give tours of the crime lab.
But yeah,
But
without it,
everybody's hair shedding everywhere and their skin cells and whatnot. I can't have that. And I've got guns laying around with the firearms guys working on them.
we went
Drugs
in the
on this
middle of
side,
the
guns
night,
on this
there was
side. I
one
mean,
room we couldn't go into, and you have to look, and there was stuff in the hallway, and the fingerprint machine was like rolled out into the hallway because they were doing something else, and we were like, how does anybody solve any crime in the city? if
Very
this is
carefully.
the circumstances.
so our gunshot residue, gunshot residue is the stuff that comes out of a gun when it's fired. And we test for that. And it's not just, oh, I know, on the shows it's like, oh, well, just test the hand for gunshot residue. No, that doesn't mean they fired the gun. That just either means they handled the gun, they were in the vicinity of the gun when it was fired, or they actually fired the gun. But that's, those are the three possibilities. So our firearms section with our 4 guys have spilled into our trace evidence section. And our trace evidence section are the guys that look at everything under those high power microscopes. Well, that means, and they're also the guys that test for the gunshot residue. So we can't open